Hi everybody, I think we're going to get started. So first, just thank you for coming out on not as quite hot a night as we had yesterday, but still a pretty hot night. I'm glad. I want to thank the library. I don't know if anyone's here from the library, but thank the library for letting us use this space. We're really excited about this project. This is, again, a public information session that we're going to have tonight to catch you up on where we are so far. Hopefully this is one of many meetings as we get further and further along in this project, especially with things that are going to start happening on the site as we get closer to the fall. I want to thank Zeta for being here tonight from Data Insight. She's going to talk to you in a little bit. I think Andy Port is going to talk a little bit first, so I'm going to talk over to Andy. And again, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. Andy Ford, Director of Planning and Development, getting involved in all areas of development in the city, generally speaking. But this is one of our projects, and one of the ones that I'm working on specifically. This project has been a long time coming. I think a lot of you have probably already been to public meetings or talked about it with us before. Zeta is actually going to be doing their team. Mark is going to be doing a presentation initially of the proposed project and where that's headed. There'll be some great drawings and renderings in there to see that, and they'll give you an update of what their status is. I'm going to follow that just because it'll be more timely for most of you to talk about some of the demolition work that's upcoming, talk about a few specifics of that and what the neighborhood might expect there and what we're doing to minimize impacts during that work. So with that, I'll turn it over to Zena and Dan for that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Good evening, and thanks for coming out tonight on this very warm night. We're excited to meet with you again. The last time we got together was in December, and we were really at the very early stages of figuring out the project as a whole. It takes a long time to develop these projects, and we didn't want to go in for too long without checking in with you. So with the mayor's help and Andy's support, we decided to convene this meeting, and it's really intended to share with you where we're at and get some of your early feedback. So if you can go to the next slide, just because we have a few slides, but I'm not going to really talk to them. Our team has kind of been assembled and has been able to hit the ground running, frankly, as soon as we left that December meeting, because we felt that you gave us the right momentum and energy to sort of start working on the project.
If I could just interject there, I would also say that I have not often seen a very as well and organized and efficient team to work on a project, so that's good for all of us.
We didn't tell anyone to say that. You jumped right on it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
One of our key team members is Embark, and Dan here is going to walk you through the design of the project. But another key member of the team is PAL, Public Archaeology Lab, because they're our historic consultant. And this building is relatively complicated for a pretty small project. And it's also really critical for the overall viability of the project because its historic status allows us to find a bucket of funding under the historic tax credits that's really vital for the success of the project. So what we've done since January, you can just go to the next slide if you really mix it up a bit. We're still at the Brown School. We're still, you can go to the next slide. We still have 29 units of affordable housing, but what's changed is that we measured the building and we found that the building is smaller. So the unit mix is a little different. It's primarily one beds as opposed to many two beds that we had in our initial proposal. And we're still providing the parking ratio that we heard loud and clear was really critical, one space per unit and a few extra. And we're still working very closely with Andy and the planning department to make sure that the site as a whole is an enhancement to the community, because it's sort of a puzzle and a sea of asphalt that really needed to be rethought. The existing amenities, the Article 97E elements were sort of underutilized. Parking was a bit of a mess. So since then, we've really kind of taken a big picture look and refined all of those elements. But in terms of what everybody is probably wondering, like, why does it take these guys so long? Well, I wanted to sort of take a minute or two to walk you through sort of what we're going through. So we have to, first of all, comply with historic tax credit syndication guidelines through the National Park Service and through Mass Historic. We submitted applications for those tax credits, and the good news is we got approved in record time, which means that hopefully we'll get some allocations this year. Historic tax credits are allocated on a quarterly basis, so they have to be accrued. And that sort of drives the timeline, because until we've accrued 60%, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities will not fund our project. So when you kind of think about about when are these guys going to start, it's still a couple of years out, and it's sort of a little bit sort of this, it's a sliding process a little bit. But the great news is that we're already seeing some really positive feedback, and everything is heading in the right direction. Also, since we met with you, I think as you know, the Affordable Housing Trust allocated $450,000 in support of the project, which is critical because for us to syndicate this through the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, that program requires a local match. And that puts us in a very good position to show that the city supports this project. And what else was I going to share? Those two pieces really are the two critical pieces. And then there's all of the diligence of understanding what's inside the building and how does the building work. So we've had to do almost like a forensic investigation into the old blueprints from 1925 to understand how do the joists run in the ceiling and what's going on with the structure of the building, and bring through our engineers to make sure that we really understand the existing conditions. And a big part of this coordination has also been with Andy and Kim, because they've really helped us also take the gymnasium and the connector and the boiler room sort of off the project cost as a whole, so that we can really push through our funding and start the improvements on the actual building by them taking care of the demolition before we come into start our work. And I think Andy's going to talk more about that. But we're coordinating very closely because whatever they do impacts us, and whatever we do impacts, and we really see it as a full collaboration to complete an entire city block, as opposed to create a building and then leave the rest uncoordinated. With that, I'm excited to pass it to Dan so that he can walk you a little bit more through the drawings, and then we'll be probably opening it up for questions towards the end. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Zana. And I'm Dan Briggs with Embark. We're the architects on the project, so excited to take you through some of the details of what we've been working on. I'm going to quickly breeze through the next few slides, but this really just goes through the different eras that the school was constructed in. So really, we're focusing on the original Brown School building from 1924, as well as the 1970s edition. And we're working with the city to remove the 1956 edition in that connector piece here. As I mentioned, we have a wealth of great historic information and plans, both from the city of Newburyport as well as from PAL, our historic consultant, that really helped us give us a great idea of the different pieces and components of the building. So this is the 1924, the 1956, 74, and now continuing forward into this next era, we've been working collaboratively with the city on the demolition part, making sure that everything that happened jives with our final building product. Some of the existing conditions photos, I'm sure you're all familiar with the building, but it's been a joy for us to get to know it a bit and rediscover a lot of the great detail that's hidden behind some of this plywood on the building here. So as you can kind of work our way around the building from these slides on Lime Street, really focusing on, you can see some of the historic windows that have been preserved, really bringing that back to life across the entirety of the building. Essentially all of these boarded up windows would be refurbished. There is an existing historic behind almost every single one of those that we get to refurbish and bring back to life. You can see also just the extent of asphalt, some of these areas of the rear of the site and the sides, and really exciting opportunity to bring some green back to the project as well. And some of the existing windows in 1974 that we're replacing on that side. So as Zena mentioned, the existing site plan is really a lot of asphalt and a lot of different curb cuts, and sort of these two isolated play areas at the back of the site. So it's just an amazing opportunity for this neighborhood especially. And we're really excited to bring this to life. Obviously, I'm sure has been discussed, giving back this section of the site to the city, greening that up, creating a lot more connectivity through sidewalk connections and those green pathways, really consolidating the different curb cuts on the site so it's much more organized. There's one clear entrance and exit off of Lime Street, and bringing in a lot of new landscaping throughout the site, especially at this corner of Lime Street and Mill Street. Here, really surrounding the building with greenery. This is a three-dimensional series of drawings that show from two angles the existing, what we're planning for that demolition process, and then what that proposed building will be. So as you can see at the top, the gym and the connector piece, as well as the boiler room here, and then the removal of that section, and really recreating a new entrance off of the back side against line on the side. We'll show you more images of that with some context to help locate it. Just going through the building plans quickly. So the proposed first floor plan shows this new connection that we're creating that corresponds to Lime Street. It creates a new accessible entry to the project and gives us a chance to create some amenity spaces as well and management and leasing areas. So everything in this kind of tan color that you see here would be those amenity and support programs for the building, really clustering those around the entry, trying to create a variety of different community spaces and spaces that residents can use. And utilizing the old area of the boiler room for where our utilities and sort of back of house components will go. And throughout the building, really, our intention for the actual units themselves is to recreate as many of the old classroom spaces as we can to maintain those, and to sort of maintain the character of those spaces throughout the building to the greatest extent that we can. So moving up to the second floor, this is really identical as to the third floor. You can see again here, just trying to maintain a lot of these existing partition walls, like that is the space of an existing classroom that we're maintaining. The idea is that you enter the unit and you can still get the sense of what that space looked like when it was a classroom, same ceiling heights, same window widths, a lot of the same appearance and the same flooring, things like that. And as Cindy mentioned, we have 27 one-bedroom units and two bedroom units for a total of 29 units in the project. And again, the third floor is the same. We have two elevators, so we are actually adding an elevator to the project. It's a great component for the demographic. It's also a requirement of a lot of the funding that we're receiving. This is a really exciting series of slides that I think is really looking at that rear facade of the Brown School. This is from the 1924 drawing set, the original hand-drawn blueprints. And all of them are really immaculate facades. And the ability to really kind of bring visibility back to this for neighbors and for the neighborhood. So this is what it looks like now with the gymnasium and the connector piece. And this is where we'd like to really be able to open that up and create those views where you can experience again the historic facade of the Brown School. And then working through architecturally, we've designed a contemporary style of an addition there that's meant to tie in with that existing base. You can see all these lines, we're really trying to tie that in aesthetically to the existing building, but not to try to compete with it or pretend that it was original, but to show that it is clearly an addition to the building. So again, looking at all of the elevations here, really excited to see this building with those windows open. And on the Milk Street side, redoing the windows there to have a better residential proportion, make them operable, just make them really conducive to apartment living. We're paying a lot of attention to the existing features of the building. As Sana mentioned, there's a lot of stakeholders in the project. We have historic, we have the low-income tax credits, and we're working with all of those stakeholders to make sure that we can hit all of the requirements they have, but also to maintain as much of the historic character of the building and the inside and the outside that I possibly can. And that includes preserving as many of the blacktops, the old historic chalkboards that we can, and reintroducing them in living spaces in places that it's appropriate to have those within the classroom itself. Keeping a lot of the historic trim on the interior of the unit as well, and again, refurbishing those existing windows that are absolutely gorgeous. Along with that, just to go back quickly if I can, we're also introducing new insulation to the building to help the thermal performance so that it's really comfortable year-round for all the residents and also reducing utility costs year-round. So just a quick series looking at the building from Lime Street, so existing facade here, the gymnasium, And really excited about the ability to bring in new landscaping, new outdoor amenity spaces for residents, and to create that connective piece that sort of ties it all together.
I'm just gonna kind of jump in and say,
Absolutely.
the entrance that Dan designed is really key because it offers a line of sight for anyone who is waiting for a ride. The parking allows for a spot for a minibus to pull in if we have, shared rides to the grocery store or to the senior center. So this was a really great way to pull a piece of the building out, to cover up where we're sort of like a surgical operation where you take off the boiler room and the connector building where the kitchen used to be and then the gymnasium. But then you also bring this element that pulls it together because we do have to deal with a portion of the building that's missing. And to Dan's credit, he thought about removing some of the existing base stones around the boiler room and reusing them that we requested Andy as he oversees the demolition to kind of preserve for us so that there are elements. But it really is, we don't make buildings like this anymore. A lot of this is really spending a lot of time taking care of what's already there and restoring it. And it can be quite elaborate. Most of the windows are actually in good condition, so they are deemed reusable. But it's quite an extensive process to do that, send them out, and bring them back in. And they will be hard to operate. Some of the windows are being replaced, for example, on the 1975 edition on the other side, because we also need to have some smaller exit compliance.
Yeah, that's part of,
Yeah.
there's an egress component to that, so making sure life safety is taken care of with the new window.
But the light who's used is going to be amazing because you've got these very tall ceilings and these very big windows. So it will be stunning at the end once it's all said and done. And we're doing our best to take care of, noise and heat loss because it's expensive to run utilities. And buildings like this don't end up being the best performers, but they end up being beautiful to look at. But it's not going to be easy, for people to operate these windows even after we restore them because they're pretty large. But I mean, we're very excited about it, and some of the landscaping that we've introduced, I think, is also to make sure that the residents come out who are part of the neighborhood and the neighborhood feels comfortable being there. And there are paths that connect you kind of all around into the park areas in the back. So that's kind of been our intent from the beginning, is connected.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Zena. And with that, I can toss it back over to Andy to go through some of the demolition stuff.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So again, Andy Port, Director of Planning and Development. Some of you know me already, but I work in a lot of different areas around the city related to planning and development, capital projects, and so do my staff. One of the people we've been working with, obviously with the mayor and others, is Kim Turner. I won't be speaking to the park areas, but Kim and the Parks Commission will be instrumental in some of the improvements in that area. But what I'm speaking to here is the near-term demolition work, which is the first thing you're going to be seeing out there, which after a number of years is really good for all of us to see because we've had a few years of a gap there. So I have a couple of visuals. I'm going to use a few of these, but just to show and kind of orient you, I apologize that this is oriented at the upside down from the ones you were just seeing in a little bit, mainly because I tend to look at north at the top of the aerial photographs we see around the city. So at any rate, you see the original Brown School building. I'm actually going to use my photo here. The Brown School building will be preserved, as they were just talking about. But all of this here, the gym and what I refer to as the interstitial space, and the boiler room, which is this piece right here, and then the locker room area, all of that will be demolished. There is a close proximity here, so I've already been talking with some of the abutters here, and we'll continue that discussion as we get closer to the construction. There'll be some good coordination along the fence line and tree line there to protect all that. The parking area here will be displaced temporarily. During the construction, we need to give the contractor good access. It is a tight site in a tight neighborhood, so they will need the entire site in order to get access. To clarify as well, we also will need to close off temporarily the playground during that couple of weeks that's happening, and give them access around the site this way as well. So that area, just the aerial photograph, I just happen to think is a little easier for folks to orient themselves and see things. I'm going to skip over the black and white one here. This is just a 3D. These next three drawings are just from the construction set that we've given to the contractors. They have a whole bunch of specifications they have to follow, but just to give you an idea, this is the existing site, so the overall parcel, including the two that the city owns here, all outside there, the original school building, and then the additions pieces that we're demolishing. The piece that we're retaining, the park piece that I mentioned, the Parks Commission looking a little bit further into in terms of future improvements, we're looking to align that with the contractor's work, the developer's work for the school building. So because they are going to need access and we're going to need access, to make sure that we're not disturbing things once we put them in. So it makes sense that we tie those things together and coordinate those things together. So any improvements to that area that are following this work is not the subject of this presentation, but there will be some improvements to this area, obviously, including that asphalt area back there, the playground and the courts. But for now, the contractor will need access to those areas. So what will be happening is they will be establishing construction fencing around the outside of the site. As you can see here, they'll be making sure that these gates are closed, of course, as they're coming in here and getting access on the back as well. They'll be protecting the staircase to the original school building. And then there'll be, basically this area here, they'll do some patchwork of asphalt around that area. They'll be stubbing utilities, before the work starts. A fair amount of the time when this work starts, we don't know the exact timing of this work, just to clarify. July 10th, the bids are due from contractors, so we'll be seeing after that, hopefully get good prices, enter into a contract. I think a realistic timeline for this, based on the things we usually see, including contract execution, exchanging, insurance documents and all that, seeing things we call submittals, and getting them mobilized out there, probably August, September timeframe. So just to give you kind of an idea, but we'll be able to better inform folks. We can update our project page on the website, but we can give you a better idea once we have an idea who the contractor is and we've talked with them about those details. But generally speaking, they will be closing out those utilities. They won't really be doing work on the original school building here, except on the backside, where we're obviously, as Dan mentioned, we're trying to protect as much of that building as possible. So in essence, they'll be required to follow certain specifications to close openings in the building, cover the weatherproof them for that duration of time, any duration of time in between when the team here comes back and does the work on the original windows and openings and so forth on the original school building. So they will have access to the entire site in that area. When they are finished, we will have them leave a chain link fence around this area here. There'll be some additional work and probably some further investigation we'll do just for stormwater management and the future parking area and whatnot, working with Zeta and Mark and their team. But we will close off this area here just for clarity and security of that area. This will be loamed in seeds, so just grass essentially placed in here. The parking area will reopen, and we'll be able to reopen this area as well. There'll be a little bit of restoration work here. Again, this will not be the future park condition, but the contractor's restoration to previous condition, essentially asphalt when they do. And we'll coordinate on the park side any sort of improvements, of course. But what they will do also is leave a fence along that line as well. So again, the primary impacts that we're going to be seeing is when they're putting up the construction fencing, we'll have to close off those areas, and so anybody who's parking in that area will be temporarily displaced. That will open up again when we're done. It's really, we're talking about a matter of a week, so probably like a 6-week period. We're going to try to compact this with the contract. It'll be, a matter of details with them, but generally speaking, they will be the front part of that. You will see them come to the site, but they'll probably be doing most of their work inside, and that's because they have to do the hazmat remediation. So things like removal of a little bit of lead in the building, a little bit of the PCBs talking around windows, and primarily things like asbestos tiles or wrapping around the pipes. Most of that is actually going to be found in the boiler room. Most of that is going to be found in the boiler room area. And so what we'll actually see when they get out there is their initial time frame, and a lot of work actually will be just taking care of and cleaning up all that stuff, getting it ready to go. When they bring down the building, that's probably going to be a day or two of relatively quick work. But we'll also have to see them having to ship the materials off-site. So they do have a whole series of protocols they have to follow for all those materials. DEP protocols from the state. We have a licensed site professional and a consultant that deals with hazardous building materials. They will be overseeing the work with us. There's a series of submittals that have to be done, documentation of where the materials was disposed of, and so forth. So all these protocols have to be followed for that work. They also have a pest control requirement, so things like rodents and bats and whatnot. The contractor has to submit a plan for that and follow certain specifications and protocols to address those things prior to the work itself. So there'll be a series of things that we have to review in documentation from the contractor before they're actually out there doing the work, and that's why we add a little bit of time after contract execution before they're really mobilized and doing work. But the first work we'll do is the hazmat work. The tail of the work is really bringing the building down and then getting it out of there. And like I said, what will be left is temporarily a grass area in the middle there. That's briefly what's going to be happening. It's a little bit, the timeline's a little bit clearer once we know who the contractor is, but with that, I think we mainly wanted to see if anybody has any, questions for us that we can clarify. Yes.
I'm
Don?
glad you brought up the hazmat because other projects we've done, we've uncovered more.
Yes.
And it becomes very expensive. And are we putting a contingency in place for that? And are we sure the asbestos is limited to, I mean, I know it's in the boiler room, but PCBs on the windows, as you said, but have we done enough of an assessment? Are we waiting for the contractor? to
Yes,
do that?
that's a great question. We've done a good amount of assessment, actually. Not every project is different. As you know, every project is a little different as to how much information you have at any given point. But in this one, we actually have done a fair amount of previous studies. So we have what we call a phase 1 study and a phase 2 study where they actually do some testing in the building. And so we have a pretty good idea of where those materials are. Some of that is called out in more detail from the contractors. There's a whole series of reports, documentation related to the stuff that's made available for them as well. So we have a relatively decent assessment of those things. We also, I should mention, by the way, I forgot to mention this, there's an underground storage tank, an oil tank that was emptied, used about a couple of years ago. Emptied, we have no reason to believe there's a leak there based on the testing we've done previously, but again, to your point, we don't really know until we get in the ground definitively. So obviously we take into account contingency when we think about these projects and budgets. You never know until you get in there, but we have done a fair amount of assessment. So the good thing is we're starting off with a relatively known quantity of what we're dealing with, so that we shouldn't see any quote-unquote surprises from the contractor, so to speak. And they're obligated when they do their bids to say that they're familiar with what they've looked at and they walk through the building and they have their own, general speaking, assessment of that as well.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
Andy, where do you stand on financing for the demolition?
For the demolition, so we have, it's about 112,500 from Kim Fry. I don't know if you can help me with the city side, that number, but it's about 250 that was already on the city side with the city council, and about 112,500 from a grant from the state. We have another grant application into the state. We try all different avenues to get funds, including state resources. In this case, what we call housing choice. So where we've gotten funds before. So in essence, we have several $100,000 ready for that. We'll see when we get the bids. Hopefully there'll be good prices, and we'll have extra in there for contingency and so forth. But it's about $350,000 in that range right now. We'll see where that lands.
Are the contractors accessing the property from both Lime and Prospect?
They will primarily, we're going to see them come in from Lime, but as it is, it's very tight up against the street there.
Yeah.
So we really have to give them access around the back as well. They'll probably be coming in this already has a gate that's more appropriate for vehicles that comes in. So they'll probably be coming in primarily from here when they come in that side. But we do need to give them access here as well. It's going to be hard for them to really get much in there without obstructing the streets, and we obviously don't want to impact the streets.
They just paved.
But you're not opening.
Right, yes. And that's one reason why we're not digging up utilities in Lime Street either.
Please.
Yeah.
And they must have in their contract that they will repair anything that they wreck.
Yes, they're required to restore, so we
People on Lime Street waited a long time for that road to be paved.
Yes, and we did a series of photographs, obviously pre-photos of our own, of course, to document previous conditions and whatnot. And like I said, I've talked to the property owners here, there's one or two more I need to tell them, but to make sure that we're taking, because this is in tight proximity there, so the timing of that work and protecting the trees and the fence.
So that's my property line.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I'm asking you. So what will happen with the fencing and the trees in there? Is that a different conversation?
Yeah, so this fencing is required to be retained. There are some segments that where it does that perpendicular, makes a connection there. So those will be temporarily disconnected, placed back. We'll be coordinating with the property owners at that location during the timing of that work and the nature of it. We'll be walking through that a little bit more, obviously, with our contractor, with you, about protection of the trees, the methodology in which they pull that building back without impacting that. So again, every construction project has different conditions, but we plan to protect the trees and the fence lines along there.
Andy, what about the gate on the Prospect Street side into the basketball courts? Will vehicles be going in
In
there?
there?
We're not, they will, there's the possibility of them coming there, but we're probably not going to have them do that. So realistically, we're going to probably have them only be coming in here and here. We do have as a backup if there's some reason to do so, but we're not expecting to have any need to do so since they can get what they need in there already for the opening of Mill Street. So it is a, space for maneuvering. It might be used for stockpile staging temporarily, but we're not expecting them to need to get in here in order to do that because they can get to the meeting that way.
Thank you.
And are you maintaining that, or are they replacing the basketball court? Is that going back in?
They're not changing the basketball court.
Okay.
Yeah, it would only be for access temporarily to get through, and they're not doing any physical improvements other than restoration.
Great,
That's the
thanks.
question, yeah. Sorry, let me just take this one and then just give my vote first.
Sure. The parking lot, will that be secured access for the contractors for the duration of the project until it turns into the park?
Yeah, you're for this corner right here, right? Yeah, we will have they'll have to fence that in and have it safely secured during the work. And so unfortunately, the folks who are parking there temporarily won't be able to do that. Not sure if that ended that.
No, that answers
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, those 9/9 windows, I'm glad you're keeping them, but how are you gonna winterize them? Is that, how are you going to winterize those 9/9 windows? Is there gonna be another outside window?
We're
Or
planning on an exterior glass storm, essentially, yeah, to help with that exact issue.
Will that be openable or
I
not?
think it'll have to be, yeah, we'll need a certain percentage of those to be operable, absolutely, at bedrooms and things like that.
On the windows, I'm sorry, you state the obvious that most of them are not going to be operable. Even if they were able to be opened, nobody can really open them. I was there with Andy and someone did restore windows on the Lime Street side that the city paid a fortune for. Don't operate because they're just too heavy. So once you go into your apartment, you can look out your window, but you can't get any fresh air.
So, I think that is definitely a valid observation.
Yeah.
That sometimes, some of the windows will be so heavy, somebody will need to come and help hold them. And then you'll say, well, I'm not gonna bother to open them. But we are looking at all sorts of mechanisms that can make them a little easier. And we have a window consultant who's working with us through this, but your observation is spot on. We've toured historic buildings, we've seen the same issue with these very, very large old windows. So, I expect there to be a combination of some windows. We have an infill addition from 1975 that will have more modern windows. So there's one side of the building that may not have that issue, and the windows are not as large, but there are
Most
some.
would say,
Yeah,
yeah.
but some of the other windows might be difficult to operate. Yeah, I agree.
And we'll be leaning on consultants to help us figure
Even
out the
if there are,
specificity of
we're
that.
gonna have a storm set up in the exterior, so even if you could open the side,
Yeah.
you don't get to the fresh air.
Well, what ends up happening is the property maintenance is called to come and open windows. That's what we've seen on other projects.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The property maintenance team gets called in to help folks open windows. And, that's not ideal, but I think a lot of people are going to need assistance opening these windows because they'll be very difficult to open and cumbersome and big.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm glad that it gets kept.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's just, too bad to go into this building and in an apartment and not be able to get any fresh air. And I don't think it's a satisfactory, solution to that. Again, especially if they need to be, if they can be open with management's help, if you've got this big panel outside, the exterior, for insular purposes, it doesn't matter whether you can open them with help or not. Okay. all right.
Yeah, just to build a little bit on what Sandy was saying, we are going to lean on our consultant on the window to help us work through the operability of it and make it as easy to open as we can. But we also will have new HVAC units in each of the units that will supply fresh air continuously.
We will have a combination of a ventilation system where we're constantly moving air,
Yes.
as well as heating and cooling through an HVAC system, because,
Nothing in life is perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, so that part we have figured out, and we're working through the details to try to make those windows as feasible as we can.
So the heating system is still a centralized heating system, the HVAC, or
Individualized.
It's
Each
individualized?
unit would have its own vertical unit essentially.
are you considering either having it ready for solar on that roof? or-
Yes. We are looking at our roof and trying to identify how much space we'll need for our mechanical equipment. And right now, I think we have maybe 40% of the roof open for solar. And, yeah, we would love to integrate solar as well into.
Is that in scope of what you're doing now, or would that be an add-on later?
It's driven by the budget, by the costs. If solar is fundable through the tax credits, so if we find that we have funds left to put the solar in right away, we will.
And given essentially the summer report, a significant amount of work has been done by Doge, is that going to affect you, or are you worried about that?
I mean, we're always worried. We don't know. That's why I was excited to share with you that the National Parks Service and Mass Historic came through and approved our tax credit application, because that shows that there are folks still working and reviewing these projects. And our hope is that, we find those people who are still there. But I know that there's been a lot of pain.
No guarantee until you got the money.
Exactly.
If there's no noisy compression units, ground level,
No, it's all
noisy
equipment.
to the extent they are up on the roof.
Yes, everything is up on the roof, and essentially we have individual condenser units, so every unit can operate to its own comfort, because with our community of residents, we do know that personal preferences on comfort is really relative, and some of the building is south-facing, and north-facing is a very different experience in terms of heating and cooling. So we wanted to offer as much flexibility and control for individual residents, and that's why we went with the individual units for each unit.
Right here in the front.
Andy, just to clarify, so when the demolition phase happens, which is going to be soon, pretty much the whole area will have the chain link fencing around it.
Yeah, again, we're relying upon the existing fencing
Yeah.
here and here, of course, but yes, around this area here,
Okay.
which is close to it, yeah.
And then you said that's maybe like 6 weeks.
Again, estimate, ballpark, estimating, right? Again, trying to work to compact the schedule, a lot of that's in there, in the building.
Yeah, give or take,
Yeah.
but then after that's done,
Yeah.
the chain link fencing is going to go away except around the site that was taken down?
Correct, so this area will reopen, as you're
Okay.
seeing it today, really, it'll be really reopened as, for that same area.
And then the chain link, or whatever, fencing will be around the demolished area, which is the former gym.
Correct.
Until this project gets started, which could be in a few years, is that what I heard? you
It's
say?
dependent on that schedule. There may be
Okay.
other reasons for us to come in and do a little bit of testing here and there.
Yeah.
For instance, putting stormwater management over the parking,
Yeah.
might get some soil, information, things like that, a little deeper, and whatnot. But yes, that's generally.
Okay, yeah, so it'd be nicer to have the smallest area with the chain linking around it, because if it's a few years before the project gets started in earnest.
Understood, yeah, no,
Yeah.
understood, yeah, I keep thinking about that as well, and I know we'll be continuing to have conversation about that, and as we get going along here, we may decide to make some adjustments on that. Again, it's a little bit partly dependent on schedule, and of course, recognizing there might be an ability to sort of utilize, minimize impact visually,
Yeah.
utilize an area, but recognizing that this area is going to be used for the future parking, so obviously we don't want everybody to think that's going to be a parking area for residents where it's going to be used for the use in the future.
Yeah, I don't
But-
think changing it, but I just like visually, and if it's a few years away, just how to minimize that. And then people can go back and park in the area that they're using now.
Agreed. Yes,
'Cause
we'll have some further discussion about
Okay.
that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because I don't think I realized how far off this was, other than the demo. That's just me. I didn't realize that it was maybe years away till the project got started.
Yeah, understandable concern, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, just late before I go there, just was one or two hands here that.
The demo phase.
Sorry? Yeah.
The demo phase, so that whole gym area is coming up, right?
Correct,
So
yeah.
you're gonna have large trucks and equipment coming
That's
down
what it's gonna
the
have.
roads. Are you planning, and say it doesn't start in the fall, spills a little bit till winter,
Yeah.
the roads get tight down there with the snow and the parking. You're gonna try and get like a dump truck with a trailer down Milk Street, you're gonna be ping pong.
Yeah, as with any other project. Oh, yeah, understood, yeah. No, all practical considerations. It'll be a little easier as we walk through the construction sequencing and details with the contractor. We'll obviously be doing the usual kind of things where we coordinate with public services. There might be some outreach to the neighbors, talking about there might be a turning movement they have to make with a vehicle that, takes away 2 spaces on Line Street temporarily while they're doing that. Things like that might happen, but we'll coordinate on those types of things to try to minimize the time frame in which something like that might happen.
So
where
there'll be
spaces get
scheduled
taken off.
times.
Sorry.
There'll be scheduled times when the trucks are going to be going around the streets.
We will be working with the contractors so we can have a clear idea of when those are gonna happen, so that there's as little impact as possible. Yeah.
Idling, because, you know, the diesel.
Yes, there's specs for that as well, for the contract, you know, minimizing those things, but we'll also go through that with them. We'll be out there looking at their work, what they're doing it, to try to make sure that they do follow things like, you know, not idling the trucks, you know, not starting the trucks early in the morning, and, you know, not arriving to, you know, site wait, ready to do something earlier than the time we give them, all that kind of stuff, yeah.
So when this ramps up, sorry.
I was just gonna add the one other thing about the carbon control.
Yeah.
Newbury Police Station, all the neighbors, I heard one neighbor was catching 12 rats a day. So I just, it's a really
Yeah.
scary thing,
Sure.
especially when we live close by.
Yeah, there's a whole spec for that, and I'll have to go through that protocol before they take the building down. And we have a consultant who's worked there before, put the specs together, and they have to do a something we call submittal, which is their plan and approach to that, which will be reviewed and approved, so they can.
And sometimes they're started during demolition, not.
Yes, yeah.
So when this project ramps up too, you're adding contractors and subcontractors and workers. You're gonna be adding about 40, 50 more pickup trucks, trying to park where everyone else is trying to park.
They're required to park in the site. I mean, there's gonna be, occasionally there'll be some things, of course, I don't know, there's always the unforeseen. I don't wanna pretend it's not the unforeseen, but they're required to be within the site. So, you know, those are, that's why, partly why we're giving them, for instance, the basketball court space, because they can park some vehicles over there while they're maneuvering around the back asphalt between the building where they're actually gonna need to have that maneuvering space. So, again, it's temporary back to the neighborhood to not be able to use that space, but it makes more sense than displacing cars. We know that, so, yeah.
Especially losing the parking that we have now at the Brown School. Now we're adding more of those cars back to the streets.
Yeah. Sorry, I saw.
That's okay. Is
Yeah.
there a post demolition, once the project gets going, is there a timeline on how long the construction is going to take?
Sorry, for the demo, the actual construction of the house.
For the project?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
so we expect that it would be between 20 to 24 months to complete the project. And, but the key that I really want to be upfront with is that we're still a couple of years away from starting because the funding will take a couple of years to get allocated and put together. So I'm hopeful that in 2027, we'll be moving dirt and, you know, starting, but I'm really not able to, you know, and we'll stay in touch and we'll give you updates. Very difficult right now to sort of set an exact date.
Thank you.
Another project going question, not a demo question. Do we know what the ratio of units to parking spots on site will be?
Yes, it's 1-to-1.
Cool, thank you.
And we have a few extra spots for a minibus or an Uber drop-off and property managers so that they're not taking up any spaces.
Excellent, thanks. That's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep, Councilor Donovan.
Yeah, just real quick. So first, I assume there's going to be a way to be communicating with the neighborhood throughout the process. Consistently, each time there's going to be anything happening on the site, right? Like, obviously throughout the demolition, but then there's going to be a waiting period and you'll loop in the neighborhood and
We're going to continue to use all the methods we can traditionally use. I frankly, as a planner, I would love to be, if at some point the assessor's office has just an email address and a phone number for, you know, a directory property owner, we can reach out to that way. It's not quite set up that way. So we'll be using things like, you know, the webpage, if you're signed up on the city's website and you subscribe to, you know, whatever, you know, checkboxes and so forth of projects. We'll be updating the project webpage. We'll have that. It'll be, you know, devoted to demolition initially, and then it'll be devoted to the projects that they're working on. At a later point, we'll have updates on there. So that will be one page where you can sort of say, what's the 2-week look ahead that we might see from the contractor, for instance. And we can use other methods to get, you know, sort of a blast out, if you will. But to some degree, that's self-selecting by who's engaged, you know, or who's subscribed or whatnot. So with that, we coordinate with the mayor's office and others, obviously, to get the word out. We'll coordinate with the ward councils, obviously, to the extent that you're, you know, have listservs and folks that you're in contact with. So we're happy to, if you have ideas of methods that we haven't used, please let us know. We're happy to integrate that in what we're doing. Ideally, I'd love to be able to just blast and have it immediately go to all property owners and residents that are living in the geographic area. It's not quite as easy for us to grab that, you know, perfectly. So we want to make sure we can get to everybody. Thank you.
Maybe aim further to Jenny's point, is like when you get closer and have the funding and it's a few years from now, we can have another meeting like this to see.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
sorry. Thank you, I'm glad you brought that up, and I apologize I didn't address this earlier, I should have, when they were doing their presentation at the tail end, is, just to be clear, the project, the zoning has been made for this, we've been working on a lot of details on this, and we've got the arrangements of this project all moving ahead, which is great, but there will be a planning board review of this project down the road when they come in before they're doing their construction. Well, I think we're pretty familiar with this plan. I think it's a great plan. I don't think there's much that needs to change, generally speaking, in it. But there will be discussions of things like the landscaping and all those other kind of usual things, the screening around the property lines and so forth. So that will be part of the formal permitting process before the planning board. The Historic Commission will review the preservation restriction on the original building, and that'll be part of the formal recorded restriction as well. All these pieces that we talked about being preserved, the windows, the chimney stack, and so forth. But at the end of the day, the planning board, that will be one method by which the butters get notified down the road, and there will be a public engagement process in that, so you can chime in. That could be the same update, of course, to the generic, but for those who are, the 300 butters, you're going to get notice. You can come to those meetings, you can chime in if you have concerns about, what the plans will look like at that point, and if there's any massaging of that can happen between the applicants at that point and the planning board.
And just to kind of add to Andy's point, I mean, we talked about this, we haven't gone for site plan review yet, but we wanted to get everyone in the room and just share with you where we're at and how we're coordinating, so that you can look at our plans, think about them, and have a chance to come back with feedback. And in terms of keeping you posted, we're more than happy to also have an email blast to sort of fill you in on what's going on. It might maybe once every 3 months right now, because there's not much that's going on, but as we get closer to starting, because I know that you'll be interested in our construction management plan and how our trucks are going to move through the site. So we're happy to create that, and we can start a list that you can sign up for now. Actually, this is a good time because I think everybody interested in this project is here.
I think that would be a great idea. Thank you.
One thing I will add, just to clarify on that same point, on the city's website is the ability to do subscriptions or subscribe to certain news updates. I'll try to coordinate with the mayors. I'm just checking out on how we have that set up there and configured. But if you're going there and you subscribe to the Brown School component, go down the list and check that one. We will utilize that as one means. So that's one method by which you can make sure you're getting it to an email, essentially an email address. We'll follow up on the details of that just to see how that's configured there. But if you go and ask to be, give it an update when that page is updated, you would then get something so you can get into what's happening. So.
I might be jumping too far ahead here, but as far as the landscaping goes, are you planning to put in all native New England plants, or will there be any other plants included?
Yeah, we have a landscape architect on board for the project. They haven't really started their work in earnest. We're waiting for some more clarity on the schedule from our point to really do that. But the intention for them, and they specialize in these type of projects, would be to do all plants that comply with any local bylaws, and to do non-invasive native plants, and a mixture of ornamental and screening type plants in the right locations.
Nothing exotic or ridiculous. Right? For the plants?
Oh. I can't imagine what that, yeah. I mean, they're landscape, they might get creative, but no, it would be all native plants.
Yeah, that's a type of criteria that the planning board tends to look at, come up in the discussion there, native, low impact, low usage of water, get it kind of naturally, surviving as opposed to needing constantly, heavy maintenance, that kind of thing, so.
And when we get to site plan review, we would have a planting plan that would specify the quantity and location of each of those species with a great amount of detail, so you can all review it and provide feedback and comments.
There's some other hands. Yes.
Just as a member of the neighborhood, I wanted to say thank you, because there are a lot of great questions tonight, and this is a thoughtful and professional process. And as someone who's been impacted by it, I just wanted to say thanks, because it's a really exciting plan. It's very transparent, and so I appreciate that as a resident.
Thank you for saying. I mean, I'm a professional planner, so I believe that's like a core tenet of what community planning. So I thank you. It's good to hear that. We obviously strive for that in every project we work in. And I think this has been, like I said, a really great team to be working with, both on the city side and on the police team. So I think we're getting a really good setup here for this one. Any other questions?
I was going to make a comment, Andy. One of the things as we go along the process, I've seen in other communities is as fencing or even on the building to kind of have some flyer or descriptive narrative, whether it's QR code, an email. It's a way for people who are not here, but who are walking the community, wondering what's going on.
Yep.
And that can be a great way for even if you have questions. And I know it's going to be hard, you don't want to field all that. But it's not that hard when you put something out there that
I love the QR code idea. That's a great one too. So we will, we'll take a look at that as well. That can point back to the webpage or, you know, and so forth. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I'm sorry, yeah. Yes?
Andy, the porta potty that mysteriously appeared on the corner, is that going to be there for 3 years?
Yeah. Sorry, no, that's going to be going, actually, it's on my miscellaneous list of things to do, following up on miscellaneous, so we've been dealing with things like the amphitheater components were taken away and set aside, you know, the gargoyles, whatnot. So at the end of the day, yes, that will be removed, that will not be there after, yeah. And it's one of those things, we just want to make sure that's out of the way. So, yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it. This is a really good turnout with the heat, and I know it's down over at the Brown, so thank you for